The Premier League is back. We've seen a couple of games, but it's the international break. So like everyone else who loves this game, I'm going to try and predict where each team will finish come the end of the season. No messing about. Let's get straight into things with who will finish rock bottom and see themselves playing in the Championship next season. Obvious answer, Burnley. Burnley just don't have enough for me. Obviously, as a Leeds United fan, I watched them a hell of a lot in the Championship last season, and they were fantastic, but they were great because of their defensive performances. That defensive record is what kept them level on points with Leeds and got them a second place finish. The issue is, I just don't think it's going to work in the Premier League. As much as I'd like to see all three teams that came up stay up, I think Burnley's concentration on defensive play will not have the same impact in one of the best divisions in the world. Not just that, but they lost one of their main central midfielders in Brownhill. That's a big loss. And they also lost Trafford, the starting goalkeeper, and a very good goalkeeper at that. Two big losses, tied with the fact that Scott Parker absolutely reeks in the Premier League, and I've never seen him do well, says to me that Burnley will finish rock bottom and be back in the Championship. Just above them in 19th place, a team who have been in the Premier League for a little while now, is Brentford. It's a really simple equation for me. They lost their manager, they lost their captain, they lost two of their best attackers, two of the best attackers in the Premier League. They're going down. I don't think much more needs to be said on Brentford. I think that Thomas Frank was fantastic and did such an unbelievable job at Brentford to keep them up there and fighting for as long as they have. I just don't think they have what it takes now. Paired with the losses to the squad, Brentford, for me, are going down. And it's another one, another Premier League mainstay that I've got just above them in 18th place in Wolves. It's a shame, really. I quite like Wolves, but they've lost Cunha, and they've, for the last couple seasons, been slipping down a few places each year. And it just feels to me like it's their time. I remember when they got promoted, and for the couple seasons after they got promoted, there was a lot of excitement around Wolves. I'm sure you'll remember it. They were fighting even for European places at some points, and at stages in a season, you thought, oh, there might be a chance that they can finish in Europe here. All that excitement is just gone. There's nothing to Wolves anymore. I look at them and think, it's been coming a lower place. This season, they're going to get relegated. I can see it happening, and I just don't think that they have the quality to get them out of a relegation scrap. So they're definitely going to be in and around it, as are the team that I have placed in 17th in Sunderland, one of the newly promoted teams. And strangely, they finished much lower than Burnley, had a much worse season overall in the Championship. But I think they've had a much better transfer window. Sunderland have gone out and spent a hell of a lot of money, and that'll make a real difference. They've got a much better stadium, a much better fan base, and I do think that atmosphere, when teams are going to play in front of 50,000 people at the stadium, will make a real difference. It's hard to understate, not just it intimidating the opposition players, but also the boost that it'll give the Sunderland team on a regular basis. The only thing that worries me on their behalf is AFCON, because a lot of the players they've signed will be going off to AFCON. Maybe that could be a period where they start to falter. And as much as they've had a very good start to the season, I don't think we can look too deeply into 3 games, because once we start coming into the Premier League season and more games are taking place, a lot of their players will start to look knackered. But I think Sunderland, for me, have just enough to stay in the Premier League. Before I go on to 16th, let me know in the comments the 3 teams that you think will get relegated, nailed on. But 16th is a team who have had a horror start to the season in West Ham. I just think that Potter will go. Obviously, he's not the man to take them forwards, is he? But when he does go, they've got a decent attacking line still. They've got Paqueta, they've got Bowen, they've got a lot of Premier League experience in and around the squad that I think a new manager should be able to step in and keep them up relatively easily. The reason I've even got them this far down, all the way down at 16th, is because I think it'll take another 4 or 5 game weeks before Potter goes, and they'll have already lost a lot of momentum that could have been built in those opening couple of weeks. I don't see them going down, and maybe this is a little bit naive from me. I just see West Ham as a big Premier League team, established in the league. They've got a huge stadium, which is one of the worst stadiums I've ever been to, by the way. I just can't see them getting relegated, but I suppose it could happen, and at some point it happens to a lot of clubs. Let's go on to 15th, the last team, in my opinion, that are going to be scrapping relegation throughout the season and in and out of that battle, and that is actually my team, Leeds United. We're the best team in the Championship last season. I appreciate Burnley fans might not agree with that, but we scored a hell of a lot more goals and obviously ended up winning the league, so it only makes sense. I think Ellen Road is going to be a massive factor for us. We've already seen we've not lost at home yet, which is incredible to say. We've played Newcastle and Everton. The only worry for me from a Leeds United perspective, and if you're a Leeds fan, please like and subscribe because I talk a hell of a lot about our club. I think we're going to end up struggling to score goals. We've already seen it. The only goal we've scored in the league was from the penalty spot. Leeds need a player to step up and start grabbing goals. That's where we'll struggle, but I don't think we'll get relegated. I think we'll finish 15th in the table. No bias at all. I swear there is no bias involved. 14th, Bournemouth. I love Iraola. I think he is an absolutely fantastic manager. However, I think coming into this new season with Bournemouth, he's got his hands tied behind his back a little bit. I appreciate they've signed some replacements, etc., but they lost 3 of their starting defenders from last season. That is not easy for any manager to deal with in any circumstances, and 2 of them went for over 60 million quid, which shows just how good they were. Bournemouth, I could see them maybe finishing a little higher. I don't think there's a world in which they get dragged into a relegation battle, but for me, 14th is a pretty accurate prediction for them. We'll go on to 13th in Everton. Since Moyes came in, I think he's steadied the ship there. They've been calm. I think they have a real problem up top. There's not much attacking quality, in my opinion, but Grealish has looked promising in those first couple games, and those first couple games can be a little contributing factor to some of these predictions. And I think that he'll get a lot of assists, hopefully step up and get a couple of goals for him. The new stadium should motivate the players. Every time they're going in there, it's like a new place to impress, a new place to get the fan base to love you and build memories in this new stadium. I don't think they'll be in a relegation battle, and I don't know, Everton are just there, aren't they? They're just middle of the road. They, a couple seasons ago, were flirting with relegation all the time. Moyes, steady. Grealish, good. New stadium keeps them out of the battle. In 12th place for me is Crystal Palace. I'd like to see them finish a lot higher, and I really love Glasner. I think that they've been done dirty with the European demotion. However, still being in Europe in general will be the thing that demotes them to 12th place for me. I think without Europe, they might have snuck a 8th or 9th, but also, the loss of Eze is really big. They still have quality up top, obviously, and they'll never get dragged into a relegation battle, in my opinion. Keeping Gay is massive. That'll make a real difference. He might end up going in January, which could send them a few places either way. But again, I'm trying to skip through a few of these mid-table teams because a lot of them, I don't think they're in danger of going down, but I don't think they're in danger of challenging for Europe in any way, shape or form. That's the same for Bournemouth. That's the same for Everton. That's the same for Crystal Palace. And that's the same for the team that I have in 11th, Fulham. Horrible start to the season for them, but they've got some decent players. They've got a decent manager. They're just going to end up finishing mid-table. I don't even really want to talk about Fulham, if I'm honest. They're just middle of the road. I think that this is exactly from 13th to 9th is where Fulham will be for the next 4 or 5 seasons, in my opinion. Unless something drastically changes, they either really invest or sell a lot of their star players. I just don't really see them doing much either way. So Fulham are in 11th and 10th, a little bit of a drop down the table compared to last season. For me, is Nottingham Forest. They managed to keep a hold of a lot of their stars, even if it did look like Gibbs White was being held at gunpoint. They kept him at the club. However, we've already seen some tension and some issues between Nuno and the mad ownership. I don't think that will particularly mean he goes anytime soon, but I think that if that's already going on, maybe towards the end of the season, we could see a bit more of a fracture and Nuno disappear. Also, with that addition of European football means a lot more games. Do they have as much depth as a lot of the teams that I'm predicting are going to be in the top half of the table? Probably not. So for me, Nottingham Forest, 10th. But with European football, I would imagine that most Forest fans will be pretty fine with that. Maybe they could get a little cup run in there or something, but we'll see. In 9th place is Aston Villa, dropping from last season. they didn't make the signings or couldn't make the signings that they wanted to make in the summer. And I think you could say the same about a few clubs where financial fair play is really having a negative impact on their ability to solidify themselves as a top 6 team in comparison to Tottenham and Manchester United, who finished pretty much in relegation spots last season. I don't know. Villa dropped 2 spots last season, and I think the other teams that have finished below them have strengthened and will do better, if not they underachieved last season. So I don't think Villa finishing in 9th is actually that bad, given the fact that, you know, they're bringing in Jadon Sancho, etc. They don't have the greatest squad depth. They've had to let go of a few players to even meet FFP demands in general. 9th place for Aston Villa, and I wish them all the best of luck. I hope that they can manage to finish higher than that. I really like Villa as a football club. Proper atmosphere, proper old school stadium, but 9th for me. And then in 8th, maybe surprising a lot of people, is Manchester United. But hear me out. There's one main reason that I think Manchester United will end up finishing 8th and potentially even getting a European spot if they're fighting around those places. And that is, Amorim is dog water. And he's not going to last, is he? He's going to go. So when he does go and a new manager comes in, they've got a lot of good players at the club. Still got Bruno Fernandes. They've brought in Cunha, one of the best attackers for the last couple of years in the bottom half of the table, admittedly, but a proven Premier League player. They've brought in Mbeumo, a proven Premier League player. I've really not liked the look of Sesko so far. I think he's going to be a huge flop. But, you know, he's a Bundesliga player who is doing very well for a couple of seasons. So when a new manager comes in and has that talent there available, a bunch of good defenders as well and a couple decent midfielders, they'll do all right and they'll finish 8th. I don't think that they'll be in any danger of getting top 4, but I also don't think they'll be scrapping at the bottom end of the table again. They've got no Europe. They've got no else going on. They're already out at League Cup. 8th place for Manchester United makes complete sense. The only thing that stops them getting a decent finish this year, and a decent finish for them is 8th in the table, is if they keep Amorim for too long. Maybe he wins 1 or 2, builds up a bit of credit, stays for another 3 months, and then they lose loads in the process. But above them, in 7th place, is Newcastle United. And maybe this feels like one of my riskiest predictions on this list, because they've lost Isak, who has obviously been their best attacker for years now. And they've had a poor start to the season, but I just look at that midfield. I look at Bruno, I look at Tonali, and I go, yeah, Eddie Howe always gets the best out of players. They've still got good defenders. Pope's solid in net. They should be able to climb back up and recapture some of that form. I really don't know. What's that fella they've signed up top? I can't even remember his name off the top of my head. That big German fella who said that Kai Havertz is his favourite German player of all time. I don't know why they spent so much money on him, but they kind of had no other option. I think Visser will come in and do quite well, but will them two combined even make up for the loss of Isak? I don't think it will. However, I think they'll have enough to finish 7th still. We'll go on to 6th. Maybe a surprising shout again. And actually, this is probably the most controversial one of the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's Brighton. Brighton have lost a couple decent players in the last few years, but the style of play, etc., has still kept them fighting in and around the top half of the Premier League table. And I just think they've got no Europe, they've got a fantastic manager, and they've got no pressure. You look at Newcastle and Manchester United, Newcastle want to continue, Manchester United want to bounce back. But I just think Brighton will be the dark horse that just stays there, just picks up points, does decent. They still have a decent squad overall, and they'll get 6th place, which would be a massive achievement for them. But I don't think it'd surprise people massively if Brighton are to get 6th, but I don't think many people would predict it at the same time. It depends if the new striker's any good. João Pedro's gone to Chelsea. He's already starting very well there. And it depends if the new striker can come in and bag goals. But for me, Brighton in 6th, and in 5th, another team that was battling relegation last season, will not be anywhere near that this year in Tottenham. They do have European football to contend with, but I think the difference maker for them, undoubtedly, Thomas Frank. Like I said about Brentford, the incredible job that he did there will be continued at Tottenham Hotspur. And you could see last season they were putting so much effort, so much energy into the European competition, winning the Europa League, one of the biggest achievements in club history. that they kind of forgot about the Premier League. And not just that, they had so many injuries last year. They were ravaged by injuries. And despite that, still managed to win a European trophy. I think this year, obviously, bar the fact that they get 15 players injured at the same time, they'll have the full squad fit, or at least a lot more of it. They've made a couple of decent signings. I like the look of Kudus. Xavi Simons should come in and do quite well. And they've got a new proven Premier League manager. I think Tottenham get 5th, maybe even sneak up a spot and swap with the team that I have in 4th place, Manchester City. For me, City are still in a transition period. Whenever I look at them and I look at the team, look at what's going on, the kind of bipolar results in many ways, I think that they've not quite got over the last couple of years. And I do actually think that this will be Pep Guardiola's last season managing Manchester City. But at the same time, while Pep Guardiola is managing Manchester City, I can also see them randomly going on a 15-game unbeaten streak and just absolutely pummeling teams and somehow winning the league. I've got PTSD from previous seasons. But I think while Pep's there, there's still the chance that they storm it and shock everyone and maybe come second or even first. But while this squad is how it is, yes, they've made some smart signings in the last couple of transfer windows. Those players still need to bed in, get used to the system. I'm keeping City in 4th, and just above them, in 3rd place, is Arsenal. Everyone has Arsenal 2nd. I have Arsenal 3rd. Every time I've watched them play, bar against my team, Leeds, obviously, because that's the way it goes this season, when they've played Manchester United, when they've played Liverpool, they didn't fill me with any kind of confidence. I didn't watch them and go, oh yeah, that's a team that's going to be challenging for the title at the end of this season. I personally think Gyökeres was the wrong pick up top. Unreal scoring goal over in Portugal. Also did it in Europe whenever given the opportunity. I just don't think he'll do it against top half teams. I can see him getting a couple of hat-tricks against a Burnley, against a Sunderland, against the Brentford, but I don't think when they're playing games against teams challenging them for those top 6 spots, he'll be the man to step up and take on defences. He's too slow. He's not agile enough. He could prove me wrong. Defensively, Arsenal are still fantastic, but I think that they'll actually drop a little bit this season. And similar to what I was saying with Pep, I think this is Arteta's last season, and I don't think he'll go by choice. I think he'll go by force. About 5 games before end of season when they need to win a couple to ensure a top 4 finish. I don't think Arteta's got what it takes to win anything with Arsenal, and maybe the players have been drilled into a system for that long that isn't working now. They'll actually drop down another position into 3rd, which leaves the 2nd spot open for a team who haven't finished that high for a couple of years now in Chelsea. For me, Chelsea's squad depth is the main difference in comparison to a lot of these other teams. They have signed a bajillion players over the last couple of years, and admittedly a lot of them at the time seemed like complete unknowns, but now you can go, all right, yeah, pretty solid. They should all be used to the system. They've been playing and training with Chelsea for a minute now. And also some of the signings that maybe a year or two ago or at the start of last season would have been viewed as slight flops, slight risks. Your likes of Enzo Fernandez, your likes of Moises Caicedo, who cost a hell of a lot of money, were strong last season. They've come into this season off the back of a Club World Cup win, which should breed a lot of confidence within the squad. They beat the Champions League holders, Paris Saint-Germain, to win that competition. And I just think I can see it for Chelsea. They've got some good attackers. They're solid overall. As much as Maresca's still a bit of a strange shout that he ever even got that role, I do think they have what it takes to finish 2nd. However, I don't think they'll challenge for the league, and that's because the team that's finishing 1st. And I'm not the first man to say this. In fact, I'm yet to see a prediction video which doesn't put Liverpool at the top of the table. Liverpool, for me, are going to absolutely run away with it. I'm saying right now, they're winning the league by at least 10 points. Unbelievable business in the summer, bringing in Wirtz, Ekitike, Isak, Frimpong, to name a few. Just quality players that you know are going to come in and do well. I mean, maybe there's some question marks around Wirtz due to the recent Bundesliga failed imports. However, you can already see, despite a lack of goals and assists in his first 3 games, on the ball, he's fantastic. Ekitike has looked really good, physical presence. Isak is one of the best strikers in the world, and they've brought him in as well. They've lost a few players, but Nunez isn't a huge loss. Obviously, Luis Diaz is a pretty big loss. He's a very good player. And then rest in peace to Diego Jota. He was fantastic for them, but even he wasn't starting a lot of the time. It's impossible not to predict Liverpool to win the Premier League. I think there's no one else. There's no one that's even going to be in and around them for the majority of the season. I genuinely think they're going to run away with it. I think Guehi would have solidified it even more, although I'm kind of saying that's not possible. The only thing that I can see stopping them from winning the league is if they have a couple of big defensive injuries at the same time. You get Alisson and Van Dijk injured for 6 months. You get Van Dijk and Gyökeres injured for 6 months. It could be a few. Maybe the defensive depth isn't the best. I think they've got enough to hold it off for a couple of months. If someone does get injured, that's the only way I can see it failing. And even with that, I still think that they'd win the league. Let me know who you think's going to finish first. Let me know, actually, in the comments. Give me your Champions League teams and the teams that are going to get relegated. So your top 5, because that's likely going to be Champions League, and the teams that are getting relegated. Because I'm interested to see, I think the top 4 for most people will be exactly the same in a different order. However, Burnley, Brentford and Wolves getting relegated. It's so hard to predict, but I think all of us, I want Sunderland to stay up. I would want Burnley to stay up. Want the teams that have come up to actually have a fighting chance for once. And maybe me having 2 of those teams being my own Leeds United and Sunderland is a little bit naive given what's happened in the last couple of seasons. But I'm a football fan. I live off emotion. I want those teams to stay up, so I'm putting them there. And I do actually think both of them, because of the size of the clubs and the atmosphere at both, which is better than the likes of Bournemouth and Brighton and Brentford and Wolves, etc., will be able to give it a good go. Anyway, I'm yapping on. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you again soon. Hit like and subscribe.